Hi, I am Scott Herbst. I am founder of Six Flex Training and Consulting, and you are listening or watching The Flex, a show where we have conversations with people who are expressing leadership with the intention that it open access to you expressing yours. I'm really excited and thrilled to have Jamie Currie here with us today. Jamie is the founder and CEO of Hope Inc. They are an agency that provides services to individuals with developmental disabilities in Southern California. As I always do, I'm going to keep the introduction really short and sweet, let you hear our founder leader story from our guest. Jamie, welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me.
My pleasure. And how I always like to start these is really, I'm interested in what you would say your story is of your pathway to leadership and founding Hope Inc. So I'll let you start wherever you see is important and take it
Sounds
away.
good. All right. So I always say I started Hope Inc. for my son, which I have a 25-year-old with severe autism. So now it's, autism level 3. Back when he was diagnosed in 2002, it was just, mild, moderate, severe. So yeah, I have a son with profound autism, and he's nonvocal. He can't speak, but he types. So I initially was a school teacher when I had my son, and
What were you teaching?
junior high.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, 8th grade history.
Bless you.
It was fun. I love kids. I love teenagers. So, yeah, so I was a teacher, and then I went back to graduate school. So, my initial graduate level training was as a school counselor with a licensed marriage and family therapy license option. And we just happened to also be in a cohort with board certified behavior analysts. It was new back in the 2000s. The BACB was just being founded. So we actually had to take the coursework to also become a BCBA.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it was super cool. It was at Cal State LA in the early 2000s. And so it was just divine intervention because I didn't know I was going to have a son on the spectrum.
Right.
And yeah, so I was having kids. I have 4. So when I was in my last class of graduate school to be a marriage and family therapist, I had already taken the BCBA coursework as well. I was taking my DSM class, the, Diagnostic Statistical Manual, and I had just received the diagnosis, and it's one of those ingrained memories of me running out of the classroom just crying. Like, what am I going to do? Where we're going through the autism symptoms, and he had just been diagnosed. And so that, always stays with me. So, yeah, I did my internship as a marriage and family therapist. I was really blessed, grateful that I was at a private practice. So I got a lot of really quality, I think, supervision and understanding of, diagnosis and treatment aspect, but we were heavily uh, ACT, cognitive behavioral, and in orientation. So I wasn't really ingrained in ABA until my son later on. Once I got my license, the applied behavior analysis was still fairly new, and only regional centers were providing that service. School districts weren't really doing it, insurance companies weren't really doing it. So my son wasn't really making a lot of progress. And because I had a license to practice and I was in scope of competency as a behavior analyst at that point, I opened my own clinic, Hope Inc. So it was for my,
When was that?
I'm sorry,
When was that?
2007.
Okay.
Yeah, in 2025 right now. So
So you're
however,
coming up on 20 years.
yeah, it'll be 19 years next year. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I didn't have any idea what I was doing, like a lot of great entrepreneurs.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah,
Yeah.
so let's talk about what you've learned and your pathway and how you've grown not just as a business, but how you've grown as a leader. I'm really interested in.
Yeah, business wise, I wasn't quite the leader yet because business wise, it was just a one man show at that point, or one woman show, if you will.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. And I couldn't actually be the clinician to help my son because of the conflict of interest. And that was when I guess leadership started. But for me, leadership was a little different because I had to go hire an actual LMFT BCBA. And they were very rare back then, finding somebody like myself who's dually trained, licensed,
Why
and
did you need
certified.
both?
I'm sorry.
Why did you need both?
I, well, in my case, because there was litigation involved,
Oh,
so
okay.
my son was being denied the covered benefit by insurance companies. It wasn't a covered technical benefit back then.
Yeah.
Florida was really because the Florida Tech was really leading the way
Hmm.
in uh, what ABA, the foundation of it was, and they were, trying to get insurance companies to cover. And here in California, that wasn't the case. So I went and hired an attorney to help my son and we ended up suing Anthem Blue Cross for illegal denials of claims of services. So
Hmm.
I really needed an LMFT BCBA for that scope of competency. So even though once we wrote the legislation here in California, you can be an LMFT, LCSW, speech therapist, physical therapist to provide ABA. You don't actually have to be a BCBA.
Oh, really?
Under SB 946, no, the legislation, you don't actually have to be a BCBA to provide ABA.
Okay.
You just have to be in scope of competency. But because I knew there was a chance we might head into litigation, I was very particular that I needed an actual BCBA because I was watching the trend. I knew that BACB was making headway. I was watching the other states with what they were doing with insurance coverage. And so it was just me and another LMFT BCBA. She was helping my son, and then another mom at school found out what we were doing, and she was like, "Can you help my son too?" And I just
Hmm.
started saying yes. I think that's where that leadership piece is. I learned to just say yes and quickly figure it out. And it seemed to work
Hmm.
out because it went from one mom to two moms to very rapid growth. So we ended up settling that lawsuit against Anthem Blue Cross. We ended up also at that time, school districts were now required to provide ABA.
Hmm.
So I also started a non-public school because I wanted my son in my school. So then I went and
Yeah.
hired a teacher. And I basically just wanted a program that was for me quality and ethics around providing ABA in all the domains that an individual with a developmental disability like my son needed. So,
Yes.
yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about the process of starting a school?
Wow. So I think the starting the
Because
school,
you saw a need
yeah.
and there had to be, okay, well, what next? And I'm just curious because people have these ideas all the time like, oh, someone should, I should, or there ought to be. And so, and you said I really had no idea what I was doing. Um,
I'm laughing because the what
yeah,
next still happens. Almost, 19 years in business, the what
yeah.
next still happens. It's happening right now. I just left, my supervision meeting with our administrators at our office, and the what next right now is a program designed for a behavioral based community day program for adults. And we're like, what next? You just read. You find a way. You say yes, and then you educate yourself. Once you have you're armed with the knowledge and the laws, especially the laws and how to do it, then you execute. So the school was similarly, as I just explained, but I had the benefit that I had a teaching credential. So I
Yeah.
I just happened to be like that's why I said it early on in my story. I feel like there was somebody looking out for me because I just happened to have all three things you needed to hit all three areas of services for developmental disabilities, private practice, school, regional centers, and I qualified for them. So the school thing was the hardest to do because you have to employ so many different professionals when you want to service a developmentally disabled
Right.
individual under an
Right. It's not
IEP.
just like kind of how you grow an ABA business can be a little bit organic in that, oh, there's me and now I've got more clients, so I should probably bring in some RBTs. I need someone to work with my, but then there's probably demand. It's like a school has
Yeah,
to,
back then you didn't have to have RBTs. RBTs wasn't even a thing.
yeah, right.
Yeah. No, the hardest part was it was you had to have speech, you had to have speech therapists, you had to have occupational therapists, you had to have physical therapists, you had to have either a mild moderate or a moderate severe credential as a teacher. So that was actually the challenge was being able to expand outside of, as you mentioned, the organicness of, oh, I'm a BCBA, I'm an LMFT, I can do this. I couldn't obviously provide speech therapy or OT.
Yeah.
And that's where the business part comes in, is then you have to learn how to not only hire people, but you have to stay in business and have a profit margin and finding those credentials of individuals that want to either work part-time or full-time. And for me, it really ended up being a familial experience because we were finding other moms that had kids that all had those credentials. So my
Mm-hmm.
occupational therapist, she had a son, my speech therapist, she had a daughter, and we were all essentially like trying to build a community around our children. So,
Yes.
yeah. But fiscally, it's a challenge owning a non-public school because school districts don't just send them to you. They're through litigation. So, um, not all BCBAs, but a lot of BCBAs find themselves in litigation with schools either violation, and here in California, we have the Office of Administrative Hearings. They're called OAH. And so
Mm-hmm.
violations of due process complaints. And so I ended up partnering with law firms that this was their specialty. And then regional centers also under Office of Administrative Hearings here for when those services are denied. And then insurance companies, you have Department of Managed Healthcare that you have to go through first, and then you have to go to a civil litigation court. So I ended up feeling like I was an attorney at the same time because for the
Yeah.
schools, even back then, regional centers, insurance companies, they weren't just sending you referrals. And so you had to do it really like guerrilla, what they call it, guerrilla marketing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Yeah. Well, I want to pause here and just point to a couple things I've heard, because we're getting kind of deep in the weeds, but I think there's
okay.
some really useful things for anyone here. And one really powerful thing that I heard you share is really that in growing and developing and you live from the question, what next? And I love that you said 19 years later, I'm still asking what next. And I can hear that it's what next towards the vision that we have and the need that I see,
Yeah.
right? And then I can hear that there's the attention on not just building something, but also really creating the pipeline for it and looking for, okay, not just creating it, but as we're creating it, how are we going to fill it? And how are we going to open it up and make it available to people?
hmm And do it with quality and ethics, because that's the
Yes.
next. Yeah. Because that one thing I've learned, I went, not obviously, but I went back and did my OBM certification
Mm-hmm.
and understanding how we apply behavioral analysis principles to businesses and entrepreneurism. But the one thing I learned from what you said was that just because somebody's a BCBA or whatever, there doesn't mean their personality fits for that role. There's still an element among us of learning where people fit best, whether it's if they're a supervisor, but also giving them other types of roles of scheduling or managing parents, because some BCBAs don't have like the best bedside manner, or some are too factual and lack some of the empathic piece. And then I've had to learn in the leadership role, even with RBTs, placing whose personality goes with what client. There's a lot that goes into the leadership, and once you get everything set up, implementing the quality and the ethics that I hold, my company to a high standard for, which sometimes gets me in trouble.
What trouble has gotten you into?
Well, because I take the ethical aspect as a BCBA and an LMFT very seriously, which requires us to do advocacy.
Hmm.
So I don't, just because a funder tells me something and it's not true, I will push the envelope, because I want to adhere to the ethics. And I know every state's different. And here in California, you have regional center workers or insurance companies or schools, like all these funders will say, oh, you can't have that. Your behaviors aren't severe enough. So here's an example. We have oftentimes a student or a patient who doesn't necessarily have SIB or aggression behaviors, but they have inattention. And so they're falling behind with their mathematical or money management skills. And one of those funders will say, you don't qualify for ABA. And I'm like, actually, that's not true, And so I take that ethical advocacy part very seriously. And then when you do that with a funder, they don't like that so much. So then they don't, there is a referral system and they don't want to send you referrals if you're known as the BCBA that pushes
From their
back.
perspective, you're difficult to work with.
I'm very nice when I do it,
Hmm.
but I take it very seriously. And what's countered that is I don't really get referrals from my funders, but it's given us, our company, a really good name around the moms and the dads.
Yes.
And that's who we serve. I don't work for the funder. I help families. And so I know that that's a challenge when I intermingle and network with other agencies because a lot of them they don't do that. They're like, wait, you do that? And I'm like, yeah, of course. And they're like, we don't do that.
Advocate to the
Hmm.
funders.
Yeah. And to the extent that we advocate with law firms or educating parents on how they can appeal. So we have
Mm.
all of my behavioral staff and MFT. I'm very lucky where we have programs with universities that send us their grad students. And
Yeah.
we have LMFTs, BCBAs, and LCSWs in the pipeline for getting their hours. And so I train them all on the advocacy piece of, okay, so if somebody's denied, what do you do next? And part of our parent training is teaching them that. What is your what next? Since that's the theme of this conversation, that you can do if you're denied or you feel like there's not enough hours or you've been told your hours are terminated because you've graduated from ABA. So we do incorporate in our parent training, teaching them about these avenues of appealing.
Yeah. Just one thing I want to point out too is that your approach really speaks to the power of doing good work. That, well, it does. I mean, it's you've kind of set yourself up that insurance companies aren't really going to want to refer you, and you've developed a reputation with your clients that they will refer people to you, right?
Yeah.
um and I know that's a real challenge for parents. Is there's a lot of providers out there, and finding the good ones isn't there's not they don't train you when your child is diagnosed to say, here's how you go find a great provider,
Yeah.
right? um awesome. And again, I really appreciate um the attention to cultivating um and empowering. I don't know how I say it, or even if I see it necessarily, but the attention to really empowering your clients to get what they need and get great service. And I think that's really I haven't heard anyone do that before. So
Thanks. We do it also with our staff. I think taking care of our employees, the ones that are actually in the houses, or we're clinic, community, and home based.
hmm.
So I have taken a hit on profit to provide some quality, and some of the bigger corporations, they don't do that. Here in California, you have the large corporations and they've bought up other small agencies. So I pay the highest in the county. I'm always looking at what they're paying compared to what we pay, because I don't have the turnover that they have. My staff will stay with me. I have some staff that have been with me decade. Like I have a few that have been there the whole time.
Oh,
So,
wow.
and I have kiddos that have been with me. I mean, that they started when they were 3, and
Mhm.
now they're over 20. So, but my staff is so important to us too, the quality of training. We use the apprentice model. I don't know if you're familiar with the apprentice model where you have a BCBA, we have a behavior management assistant. They're the ones that are doing their hours, and then we have the RBT. And I
Yeah.
also incentivize my one-to-one staff to do their RBT, so I give them bonuses if they do the RBT. And I pay higher than everybody in the county because I don't have a turnover problem. And the other issue is I have a great quality assurance with the way that I run my business that most other people don't.
Yeah, well, let's talk a little bit about that. And I'm really interested in the benefits, you- not just the benefits you've seen from training people, but could you talk a little bit about your approach to training and developing people and the difference you've seen that make? Because paying people more will keep some people around, but
Mhm.
not necessarily the people you really want around all the time. And I think probably that culture of growth and development really matters.
Yeah. So I think the most feedback that we get is they feel alone, like they're not supported, especially when you
Yes.
just see a BCBA once a month that goes to the house.
Hmm.
So we have a BCBA that goes to the house traditionally once a month, but their behavior management assistant goes once a week. And then
Yeah.
we also require them to come into the clinic where we're all there. So
Hmm.
they don't feel so isolated just in the home by themselves. So they're seeing 2 supervisors at least every week. And then they get to also come to the clinic where all the materials are and all the books are and feel a part of.
Yeah.
And I think that really helps with staff retention.
Awesome. And so for anyone, it's really about making sure that your people get that the organization is there to support them, that they're not on their own, and that they can get what they need.
Yes. And anytime they feel they can text us, I think some agencies don't want them texting, which I always find odd. Like they have my cell phone number. They know mine's for, emergencies, but they have their direct BCBA, they have their behavior management assistant, they have our admin director. So they always feel like they have support that they need. And of course, we run them through the RBT. We use Rethink. I like Rethink software. We've tried Central Reach. So we run them through the 40 hours, but when they're done, it's not like you're just set free. I actually use the RBT competency post their 40-hour training. And we've created our own training manuals based off of the RBT
Mm.
where it's a very live, interactive role playing. And then as soon as they start with the client, the BCBA has to be there with them, the BMA has to be there with them. So we have a very strict checklist of how we train and assure that quality.
And I really appreciate that you've put in the well, I really appreciate that you've pointed to it, the difference that it makes to invest in people.
Mhm.
And while it's a little more expensive in terms of what you pay out, I'm curious what you've seen in terms of rewards in people staying and the difference that makes. If you could point to some of the difference you've seen it makes for your clients, your service delivery, the difference it makes for like your organizational culture,
Mhm.
and any difference that you've seen it makes for just the financial health of your organization.
Well, it's hard for me to say because it's me, but I do hear my employees say all the time, we're the best agency they've ever worked for, that they feel really supported by us. A lot of, our staff comes from other agencies. In LA, we actually have a shortage. So they find more mobility where they can leave companies if they're not happy.
Yeah.
That's the feedback I get. Company culture wise, I mean, we're friendly. I'm big on how we speak to people. I have met other people that talk down, and I don't believe in talking to my staff like that. So we're a team. So part of that company culture is like we are a team. There might be a hierarchy of our education level, but there's a respect around giving them that positive reinforcement that they're doing a great
Yeah.
job all the time. If we do have to, picnic them, if you will, that that punishment
Can
isn't,
you say what that means? I'm not sure everyone's going to get what what you meant by that.
oh, an OBM
Picnic.
where it has to be positive, immediate, or delayed, or punishment immediate. Like you're running those same models that we use with our clients, but on our employees.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So we do give a lot of positive reinforcement with staff parties where, we do staff training where we provide
Hmm.
food. Um, we surprise them with coffee. Obviously we keep it under the $10. So, and we use a lot of even the variable ratio reinforcement with them where we just show up and we bring them a Starbucks when we're doing supervision, or we ask them what they like, if they don't drink. Some of them don't drink coffee, they like tea. Some of them, we have some of them are gluten-free. We have a lot of gluten-free people now, you know. Um, so we bake a lot. We it's just like I don't know. For me, because I'm a mom first, I run it a little like a family, lots of
Yeah.
baking. And if it's
Yeah.
good enough for my son, it's good enough for your child.
Well, yeah. It's though I want to point to something. It's not just that the family element that I'm hearing, because there's plenty of dysfunctional families out there.
Fair,
There's
fair.
really an emphasis and attention to maintaining a really positively reinforcing environment. And the thing I want to back up a little bit, and I'm curious if you could say something about this, is I really appreciate um, the emphasis of uh, well, you didn't say this. Maybe I'm making this up. Correct me if I'm wrong, but you really respect people's opinions and you want their ideas, even if they don't have the degree. You want to know what they think, and
Yeah.
there I can hear a background assumption of like people have something to contribute, and I'm curious how you um like that's an individual perspective I happen to share. I want to know people's ideas. When I've done some BCBA work, I have been surprised by, I mean, a lot of times, like line therapists have really, really good ideas, better than I would come up with, right? You need a little help in crafting it into something that someone else could run, but they have really good ideas. I'm curious if you can offer some insight into how to like disseminate that mentality across a culture, because I do suspect it's really valuable.
Um, I'm not sure I understand the question on, I mean,
It's
valuing people.
like you're interested in people's ideas, right?
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How do you maintain a culture where you leave the room and other people are interested in people's ideas?
So I use, inventories a lot and fidelity checks. And I let my one-to-ones, I teach them, what we do as BCBA. So I feel
Mhm.
like just showing them what we do as a BCBA with our inventories and making them a part of it and asking, what is your idea? And I'm constantly like, the consumer better than anybody because you're the one-to-one. What do they like? This is what motivating operations are. So I think that mm, again, I'm biased because it's me and it's my company, but
Yeah.
that our one-to-ones, oftentimes I give them the same information that I would a BCBA. I talk to them as if they were BCBA. And if they don't know if there's a knowledge gap, I give it to them and then I ask them their opinion or like a fidelity check on do you understand the difference between abating or abolishing or, motivation, like these concepts? And if they don't, I guess it's like it's the professor in me. I like to teach them and then I'll quickly run a BST. I gave you the information. I modeled it to you. Let's rehearse it and show me how you do it versus how I do it. So I think
Yeah.
part of it is valuing their style and but also respecting them that they're these RBTs, these one-to-ones are smarter than I think a lot of us give them credit for because they don't have degrees. So that's I
Mhm.
think probably the best pinpoint is just treating everybody the same. Obviously, we know when we meet someone that doesn't have a degree, that is a one-to-one, that might not understand intellectually at such a high level, but that doesn't mean that they can't get it or we don't still treat them kindly, and the home environment's super important to us too. I'm very clear with people that we help that our staff will be treated kindly. There's something to be said about valuing kindness and
Yes.
compassion. And so occasionally, as you know, we'll go into homes and parents will be rude. And I just don't tolerate that. So my staff oftentimes really appreciates that I have their back. I will not let them be talked to poorly by a parent, which sometimes happens, or we have a couple clients right now I've had to go where the husband and wife will like try to pull them into their argument, things like that. And so maybe it's the MFT in me that was taught like really effective communication and
Yeah.
empathy. And then I want all my staff to exemplify that too.
Awesome. Awesome. We are getting close to the time we set aside.
Okay.
I always like to ask, well, what's next? And
What's next?
it's totally in line with what we've been talking about. But so, as a business owner and in terms of your own growth, what is next for you? What is the next challenge?
So what's next for us is we are in the middle of writing a new program design for the adults. So when my son was diagnosed in the early 2000s, the rates were like 1 in 1,500 and we've watched them plummet.
Yeah.
So I'm very anticipating this epidemic of the children turning into adults, like my son who's 25.
Yeah.
So what's next for us is really trying to help the older generation because you see in our industry, I think a lot of people are still heavily focused on the kids and
Hmm.
the newly diagnosed. And so my what next, we've done that and we've helped that and we still do.
Yeah.
But I really love the adults that come to us that, not to be negative about our own industry, but the parents will say, we stopped ABA because we didn't like it, or they weren't benefiting, or we had 30 therapists in our house and we just quit. And so I love
Yeah.
the adults that come to us nowadays that really are surprised when they get the ABA that we give them. And our specialty is non-vocals, individuals that can't speak.
Hmm.
So we're heavy into typing and verbal operants. So I love the adults. So my what next right now is the community day program and helping the ones that, were lost in the last couple of generations.
Awesome. And the second to last question I always love to ask people is, what are you proud of?
What am I proud of? I'm proud of my family. Like it's been a family business. My kids, all of my kids, my husband. My husband even went back to school and did his BCBA.
Did he really?
Yeah, he's retired military, Air Force. He flies now for UPS. He's an airline pilot, but they have like week on, week off, and he's been helping with the back end and he took the OBM and did his
Hmm.
BCBA. And so I think that's what I'm most proud of is that we haven't sold out to corporate because I've gotten offers.
Yes, I'll bet you have. Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, and our nonprofit, we're partnered. We have a private public partnership. So I'm proud of just genuinely helping people for the sake of helping them because we want all these families to have the support and the quality based, ABA has gone through a lot recently. A lot of the older kids and are now saying that it was inhumane. And so I don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. And I think our field needs a redemption a little bit, especially with the shift that we have going towards more pivotal response training and natural environment and getting away from the discrete child training.
Yeah.
So I think I'm proud of that as I've actually never provided DTT.
Oh,
Uh,
wow.
yeah, I wasn't a fan, when my son was little and they sent the Lovaas Institute to our house and it was, show me red, here's a cookie. It just like as a mother intuitively. So I went to UC Santa Barbara for
Mm,
my BCBA. Once I left Cal State LA, I timed out, so I went back and took the 5 courses again. And I
yeah.
I love pivotal response training. So I guess I'm proud of that too. I mean, it sucks to say, like I'm proud I never I'm proud I never provided discrete child training.
Awesome. Anything else?
I guess I'm proud we've been PRT and, you know, natural language paradigm driven. Yeah, I'm proud of that. I guess I feel like we were ahead of the curve.
Yeah, I got it. You're proud of the work you do.
Yeah, and being able to provide ACT, I mean, it's like I went to the, Cal ABA and everybody's like ACT, ACT, and I was like, we've been doing that for 20 years too.
And that's acceptance and commitment
Yes.
there.
Yeah.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah, we've been doing that. So yeah, I have a lot to be proud of, My
Awesome.
kids work for the company, part-time. My
Hmm.
yeah. So I'm proud of.
Uh, and my last question is, if people are interested, how can they reach you?
Um, I have a website, Hope Counseling. What is my website? I don't even know my website address. It's
You're
so
on
bad.
LinkedIn as well, and you are responsive there.
I am on LinkedIn. I usually just give out my cell phone number. Honestly, it's 909-265-2086.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, I just give out my cell phone number and I have a website. I can't remember what it is. It's on my card.
Awesome. They'll find you. Jamie, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today and share your insights. And on behalf of everyone you make a difference for, just thanks for being someone who is really committed to making a real difference for people.
Thanks. Thanks for having me. It's
Uh,
always a pleasure to talk about myself for 30, 45 minutes.
yeah, glad to give you the opportunity.
Thanks.
It's been valuable. And that concludes this episode of The Flex. Thank you for watching, listening. As always, give us the likes, the follows, the 5-star reviews, whatever is available on your platform. And we will see you back here next time.